And then what do you think of this Zoom? Oh, okay.
I think it's hard work, but it's better than nothing.
Exactly. I think exactly the same, yeah.
Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Kli Yakar on Parsha.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to mute you all. It's not personal. Feel free to mute yourselves when the time comes. So I hope you all slept last night. We've got a lot of work to do this morning. Some very significant comments of the Kli Yakar in a number of areas. We'll be dipping our toes into a touch of Kabbalah, but not too much. But we'll also be gaining an understanding of some of the key elements of this week's Parsha and the book of Bamidbar, and the whole aim of a number of things which we perhaps would just normally read through without thinking, and now we'll be able to give greater context and understanding to. And our starting point is the very beginning of the book of Bamidbar. It's amazing to think we're already up to the fourth book of the Torah with the Kli Yakar. It feels like we have only just finished doing the Ramban. Anyway, it is what it is. Source number one. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai. Hashem spoke to Moshe in Midbar Sinai b'ohel moed, in the Ohel Moed. Now the Kli Yakar is going to pick up on this term b'ohel moed. He's going to make a grammatical observation, but he's going to show how his grammatical observation is central to the theme of what is going on at the beginning of this week's Parsha. When did this take place? It was be'echad lechodesh hasheni. It was on Rosh Chodesh Sivan. B'shana hashenit letzeitam me'eretz Mitzrayim, lemor, of our second year of leaving Egypt, saying as follows: Su'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Uplift the heads of the entire assembly of b'nei Yisrael. Su'u literally means to count, but the Kli Yakar, and we are not going to look at this part of his commentary today, means that we as a nation will be uplifted over the other nations of the world. We should be counted lemishpechotam leveit avotam, according to our families and our households. B'mispar shemot, according to a number of names. Kol zachar legulgolotam, each male in a head count. And the Kli Yakar now in source number 2 is going to make his observation. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai. Hashem spoke to Moshe in Midbar Sinai, be'ohel moed, in the Ohel Moed lemor, saying as follows. And he says, note, Parshat Vayikra, if we look back at Parshat Vayikra, Ketiv, there it says, Me Ohel Moed. Hashem spoke to Moshe from the Ohel Moed. So this week we start a new book of the Torah, and we have an upgrade in our communication. Hashem used to speak to Moshe from the Ohel Moed. Now Hashem speaking to Moshe in the Ohel Moed. I love it when Parshanim do this, when they focus on something which I personally would just keep reading through, and they say, wait, there's something big and significant here. The discussion is taking place inside the Ohel Moed. Lefi shebafam hahu, because on that occasion, lo yachal Moshe lavo el Ohel Moed. Previously in Vayikra, Moshe couldn't enter the Ohel Moed. Ki shachen alav ha'anan, because Hashem's anan, cloud, covered over the Ohel Moed. Therefore Hashem called Moshe from the Ohel Moed, but there was a cloud covering over the Ohel Moed, denying Moshe access. El chutz l'Ohel Moed, so Hashem's voice went outwards. We looked at this in detail when it was relevant a while ago. But now at the beginning of this week's Parsha, and the beginning of the book of Bamidbar, Kvar haya Moshe yachol lavo el toch ohel ha'ohel. Moshe was able to enter the Ohel, and therefore ba'elav hadibur be'ohel moed. Hashem's communication came to Moshe inside the Ohel Moed, mi'al hakaporet, above the kaporet. This is a very big difference, and it's letting us know that straight away at the beginning of Parshat Bamidbar, here we have a change of theme. It's like saying, I don't know, let's say there was a certain celebrity on your plane and you were flying in economy class. No, Hashem doesn't fly business class. Hashem flies first class, okay? No, that's not true. Hashem's the pilot, okay? So let's say you're telling people that you had a conversation with Hashem on the plane. There's a very big difference with telling people that the pilot spoke to you from the cockpit to telling people that you had a conversation with the pilot in the cockpit. The level of communication and relationship and prestige is completely different. Or You know, the curtain between business class and us normal people. So there's a very big difference between somebody speaking to you from business class to somebody speaking to you in business class. So there was a curtain, which was the Anan, which covered the Ohel Moed. The beginning of this week's Parsha is letting us know that now we have a significant change. Hashem is speaking to Moshe. Inside the Ohel Moed, something big has changed. And he goes on to explain that this is relevant to the context. This reference here to the conversation taking place inside the Ohel Moed, it's providing the context and letting us know why we have this mispar, why we have the census at the beginning of the book of Bamidbar, which is also known as the book of Numbers. What's the connection between the conversation taking place inside the Ohel Moed and this being the book of Numbers? It's because Hashem is now coming along to allow his divine presence to dwell amongst them. Lashon lehashrot, and the concept of Hashem's Shechina staying with them, moral hamadat Shechina dirat keva, represents the fact that Hashem's divine presence is now going to live amongst us, dirat keva, with a fixed, permanent abode, shama there. Ve'ein dirat keva, and when it comes to halacha, the concept of a dirat keva is there is no dirat keva b'pachot mishloshim yom, less than 30 days. I'll give you an example in the laws of a mezuzah. This doesn't apply inside Israel. But if you live outside Israel, then you have a certain 30-day leeway period before you have to put up a mezuzah in a house. If you stay in a hotel, you don't have to put up a mezuzah. That's not your dirat keva. It's not where you live permanently. It's a dirat arai. It's a temporary residence. If you are going to stay in a hotel for more than 30 days, then maybe you would need to put up a mezuzah there, because now it becomes your rented property, a bit more of a dirat keva. Either way, 30 days is the definition of a home becoming a permanent abode. And therefore, on the 1st of Nisan, that's when the Mishkan was erected. 30 days later, we now reach the beginning of this week's Parsha, Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And Al Kain, therefore, Bechad ben Nisan, he says what I just said. On the 1st of Nisan, Hukama Mishkan was erected. That's where Hashem moved in with us. Hashem moved in on the 1st of Nisan. After 30 days, now that it appears that Hashem has made his living place down with us a bit of a permanent living place, Hashem counted us on the 1st of Iyar. He doesn't count us straight away on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Hashem's presence amongst us had not yet taken a foothold. So we're building this up step by step. This conversation takes place inside the Ohel Moed. This is relevant. Why? Because the fact that this conversation is taking place inside the Ohel Moed is relevant to the census. Why? The census is taking place 30 days after Hashem moved in with us inside the Ohel Moed. Now, why would Hashem moving in with us create a census? What's the connection between Hashem's permanent divine presence in our midst and us needing to count? And he goes on to explain. I'm now going to explain the reason for this concept, this census. Why do we need to count ourselves when the Shechina needs to dwell amongst us? Because our sages said in the Gemara in Yevamot 63b, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mashre Shechinato al Yisrael b'pachot min 22,000. You know, we have different levels of Hashem's Shechina with us. Sometimes there's a level of Hashem's Shechina which is achieved when you have a minyan. There's a level of Hashem's Shechina which is achieved when you have a mezuman. There's a level of Hashem's Shechina which everybody in their own home by themselves can still achieve. But the more people you have together, the greater the ability is for Hashem to rest his Shechina in our midst. And so, what's taking place here is that the Gemara in Yevamot says that in order for Hashem to rest his Shechina amongst us on this level, you need 22,000 people. Where do you get the number 22,000 from? Shne'emar, because it says in Bamidbar, and we know this pasuk from our tefillah, Uvnucha Yomar, when upon resting, he would say, Shuvah Hashem, return Hashem, Rivavot Alfei Yisrael, to the myriads of thousands of Israel. Now, Rivavot means myriads. Each myriad is 10,000. That's plural. 2 times 10,000 is 20,000. Alfei, thousand, plural. That's 2,000. 20,000 plus 2,000 means 22,000. Now, we're going to build this up step by step. In order for Hashem to rest his Shekhinah amongst us, you need a unit of 22,000 individuals. Now, what's the significance of 22,000? He really builds this up nicely. V'ta'amo shel davar, the reasoning is, and this is the key point here, lahashvot malchuto yitbarach ba'ar'a ke'ein malchut'a dirakia. The aim is that we should, down here in Ar'a, in the land, down here, ayin and sadi are interchangeable in Aramaic. So Ar'a is Arza, it's the same word, okay? So we need down here to prepare a home for Hashem, or let's call it a receptacle for divine presence, which reflects Hashem's malchut above. Why do we need 22,000 down here? Because up there are 22,000. How do we know there are 22,000 up there? Kamosh Amru Chazal, as it says in Midrash Tanchuma, B'sha'ah shenigla Kadosh Baruch Hu al Yisrael Bahar Sinai, at the time when Hashem revealed himself to us, that great revelation on Har Sinai. The Midrash says, Yardu imo esrim v'shnayim elef markavot shel malachei hasharet. There were 22,000 chariots of angels, meaning Hashem, when he came down on Har Sinai, arrived with this entourage of 22,000 angels. Ratzal Omar, what does that mean? Kasheyesh mispar zeh, when you have 22,000, as Hashem bam, that allows Hashem to dwell amongst them. Hashchina shruya bam, and the divine presence can rest there. V'chein matzinu b'machaneh Leviyim. Think about how many Leviyim were there. Shenekru machaneh Shchina, the tribe of Levi were called the tribe of Shchina. How many were there in the tribe of Levi? Shehayu esrim v'shnayim elef. There were 22,000 Leviim, and that's why they were called the camp of Shechina, because you need 22,000 in order for Hashem to rest there. Al kein hutzrach limnot gam et Yisrael. So Hashem is now moving in. So we're preparing, let's call it Hashem's palace in our world. And what do we need to do to make sure Hashem can move in? We have to make sure everything's appropriate for Hashem. What does Hashem need in order to move in? 22,000, because Hashem's divine presence rests amongst 22,000 angels. We need 22,000 people, and that's why we need to start counting. And therefore, Hutzrach limnot gam et Yisrael, we have to count us as well. Leida im yesh bahem kecheshbon zeh. We need to know if we have the right number. We have to make sure that every single tribe has at least 22,000 people in order to enable the divine presence to rest over there. So this is what's going on here. Somebody commented, I must have said Sivan by mistake earlier on. I meant Iyar. Okay, Rosh Chodesh Iyar, not Rosh Chodesh Sivan. I apologize for that mistake, and it's recorded. So moving on. We've got the building blocks here. Hashem's moving in. There's a conversation inside the Ohel Moed because Hashem is creating this greater divine presence amongst us. In order for that to happen, we need an entourage downstairs to reflect the entourage upstairs. So we need 22,000 in every single Shevet. Now he's going to go on and do a little bit more maths. V'hutzruchu Yisrael leminyan shishim ribo davka v'lo pachot. So why did we need 600,000 overall? Now, what is the significance of 600,000? Because it goes on as follows. Lefi shekatav Rabbeinu Bachya b'Parsha Zor, Rabbeinu Bachya wrote in this week's Parsha, shebechol makom shashchina mitzuyah sham, whenever or wherever the Shechina is found, timtza arba machanot Shechina. If you're not enjoying the maths, it's only 4 more minutes, okay? So, wherever you find the Shechina, there are 4 different camps of Shechina. Uvesefer HaPardes, Shar Pertei Hashemot, Perek Sheni, Daf Kuf Yud Chet, Katav, and it's also known that there are 28 machanot shchina. There are actually 28 different machanot shchina. So there are 28 different encampments or groups upon which or within which the shchina rests. Now, Mahechan Lamad Lomar Ken, where do we know this from? Omer Ani, I'm assuming he knows it. We know that Hashem's shchina came upon us with 7 clouds overall. One up, one down, one right, one left, one behind, one in front, and one in the middle. That's 7. One running in the middle of Machane Levi. So we have 7 clouds. Each cloud requires 4 camps. 7 times 4 is 28. Hashem's glory appeared in each of these clouds. You always have 4 camps of Shekhinah wherever Hashem's glory appears. And therefore, you time that by 22,000. And therefore, within the 7 clouds you have 28 machanot. 7 times 4 is 28. Because each cloud has 4 camps. He then says, "Say uchshav." Let's finish off the maths. 28 pamim 22. You need 28 different units. Let's think of them as military units in order for Hashem to be in our presence. You need 28 units, and in each unit you need 22,000. So for 28 military units, and in each unit you have 22,000, Timsa, that comes to 600,000 v'od 616,000. And therefore, Kacha Yisrael. So how many were we? 603,000. We were 603,550. Either way, we need 616,000. Bnei Yisrael were 603,000, rounded down. The Levim were another 22,000. 603,000 plus 22,000, Sachakol 625,000, the 625,000. So we need 616,000 in our army for Hashem to rest in our midst. And what we came to was actually 625,000. So he's close, but not exactly there. And he says, yes. I am aware that I've gone over the number by about 9,000. Nevertheless, down here in our world, you always have to leave a little bit spare. People pass away. Maybe there won't be enough people turning 20. Either way, what's the point? The whole aim of the census at this point in Bamidbar is to create amongst Am Yisrael a home for Hashem. That's the whole point. At the center of this home for Hashem, we have the Mishkan. In the middle of the Mishkan, we have the Ohel Moed. Hashem has moved into the Ohel Moed, and in order for Hashem to rest inside the Ohel Moed needs to be surrounded by the right number of people in order to enable His divine presence, His glory to rest amongst us. That number we need is 616,000. Altogether, we reach 625,000 to be sure to have a few spare as well. But in other words, what is the point of the census at the beginning of Bamidbar? It is to prepare in our world a human group that is ready to accept the Shekhinah in its midst. Right there in the middle, it's about creating a society in our world which reflects the angelic society in Shamayim, which accompanies Hashem there. Back to the beginning of Bamidbar, he's telling us what's going on here. ועכשיו באחד באייר, now on Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Shebetaltin Yomin have a chazaka. 30 days Hashem's lived with us. Now there's a chazaka. He's really moved in. Ki tieh dirato keva. Now he really lives with us. Uvay Elokim. V'chol kedoshim imo likvod dira b'tachtonim. It's about creating a place for Hashem in our world. Me'az hutzrach linotan lo Hashem tzrichim liot k'mispar zeh. As we've explained, that's why we need to count ourselves. באותו זמן אשר יושב השם שכינתו ישיבה של קבע באוהל מועד, slightly repetitive. לכך נאמר כאן, and that's why it says here, באוהל מועד, because that's the focus. It's about enabling Hashem to speak to us inside the Oel Moed. And he says, because I think you can tell he rather enjoyed doing this, V'zeh Perush Yakar. The Kli Yakar, when he likes what he writes, calls it a Perush Yakar. This is a precious explanation. And not only does he think it's a precious explanation, he's rather confident about it. And he says, ומתיישב על אופנו במספר 600,000, אשר בו יצאו רוב המפרשים ללקוט טעם. Now we're able to explain the concept of 600,000, which lots of mepharshim went out to try and explain a reason, maspik velo matzao, and they didn't manage. So he says, everyone tried to explain 600,000. They didn't do a good enough job. Now I've explained it in the correct and precious way. Somebody has pointed out that the Leviim were counted up from the age of 1 month, as opposed to others who were counted up from the age of 20, which is true, and the Kli Yakar speaks about it, but I missed it out because I didn't want to overdo the maths today. But let's continue setting the scene of the beginning of the book of Bamidbar. The real aim here, when you're learning one of the aims, when you're learning a Parsha on the Torah, is to try and imagine that this is now a scene in a movie. What is the mood? What is the atmosphere? What is the context? What's significant here? What's happening at this point in time? So he's already started doing that. And now he gives even more context. Be'echad lechodesh hasheni b'shana hashenit, on the first of the second month of the second year. We found in our sages in Tanchum Hashem Shiru Zivug Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lezivug Kala Lechatan. This is not, this is well known, that our relationship with Hashem is compared to the relationship between a bride and a bridegroom. And there are two occasions on which our relationship with Hashem is compared to the relationship between a husband and wife. And that occurs b'shnei zmanim twice. Ha'echad hu b'sha'at Matan Torah, famously on Matan Torah, that's Shavuot. We're now approaching Shavuot. It's not that far away. It's our build-up to the royal wedding on Har Sinai, which is our chuppah with Hashem. Shne'emar, as it says, Vayiten el Moshe kechalato. Little word game here. He gave Moshe, it's kechaloto when he finished, but there's a vav missing there in kechaloto, so it also can read kekalato, like his kala, like his bride. Chaser ketiv shenimsara Torah kekala mekushetet. The Torah was given over like a bride who was adorned. Either way, Matan Torah on Har Sinai is compared to joining together with Hashem in that relationship. Hasheni, but what's the other occasion where it is compared to us marrying Hashem? Hu b'yom Chanukat HaMishkan. It is the day of the Chanukat HaMishkan. Because there it says, Vayhi b'yom kalot Moshe lahakim, when Moshe finished establishing, erecting the Mishkan. Pirush Rashi explains, Shev'yom shel kam HaMishkan limtziu Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu kechala lechatan. When the Mishkan was built, we were given over to Hashem like a bride to a bridegroom. So you see that word, b'yom kalot, it's like a kala, it means to finish, but it's also a kala. Shma mina, from here we learn, Shematan Torah huzman ha'erosin, v'yom hukam ha'mishkan huzman ha'nisuin. Matan Torah is our betrothal, the Mishkan is our marriage. Let's explain. At every wedding, there are two stages. The first stage is Erusin. The second stage is Nisuin. So at a wedding nowadays, under a chuppah, you have the Erusin, you have the Birkot, the bracha of Erusin, and a Borei Pri Hagafen, and you have the giving of the ring. That is the Erusin. At that point, the husband and wife aren't allowed to be with anyone else, but they aren't yet fully married. They're not yet allowed to live together. And then in olden times, there would be a 12-month gap. The husband would go out and earn some wages and work a bit and invest and put together a wedding feast so that 12 months later, they could come back together for the nisuin, for the second part of the wedding, and they'd be able to move in together. It was like a very, very formal engagement, followed by later the actual marriage. Nowadays, we do it all at the same time. However, in order to acknowledge that these are two separate stages, at every chuppah, we have a break between the first half of the wedding and the second half of the wedding, which is the reading of the ketubah. The reason why we read the ketubah under the chuppah is to create a buffer. It used to be many months long. Now it's just the reading of the ketubah, which now traditionally creates a buffer between the first half of the wedding and the second half of the wedding. Either way, we have two stages of marriage. Betrothal followed by the full marriage. What happened to Am Yisrael and Hashem? We all think of Shavuot as being the beginning of our relationship with Hashem, our wedding with Hashem. That's true. But Shavuot is only the first half of the wedding. The second part of the wedding, when we actually move in to live together, is when Hashem moves into the Mishkan. And that's what's happening at the beginning of the book of Bamidbar. A month after Hashem has moved in, we built the home, Hashem moved in, 30 days later it's now permanent, and therefore we have to make sure that we have everything in place for Hashem to rest in our midst. So, this theme is going to continue in the Kli Yakar's Perush on this week's Parsha. For example, in source number 3. Miben esrim shana v'mala. From age 20 and up. This is the very next pasuk in the Torah. Kol yotzei tzava b'Yisrael, whoever goes to the army in Israel. Tifkedu otam letzivotan, count them according to their hosts. Atav, Aaron, you and Aharon. Now, Kli Yakar asks in source number 4, I've just given this whole mathematical, spiritual, Kabbalistic explanation for the census. And then we start talking about the military. And he says, this is all in order to allow the divine presence to rest amongst us. Why do we start talking about an army? What's the connection between going to the army and allowing the Shekhinah to rest? Do any of you know, if you want to unmute yourselves? What's the connection between tzava and Shekhinah? I'm assuming that you're all shouting out the answer because you all know, you just forgot to unmute yourselves. Either way, this is what the Kli Yakar explains. As I explained above, that we need 28 times 22 camps for Hashem to rest amongst us. Why? What's the whole point of Bamidbar, of this census? Kedei shiyu dugmat tzvaot shel mala, so that we could reflect and be a model of the hosts above. What does the word tzava mean? The word tzava doesn't only mean army. The word tzava also means a group of angels. Hashem is known as Elokei Tzvakot, Hashem Tzvakot, the God of the hosts. So tzava doesn't necessarily mean military. Tzava means group of angels. Therefore, Shafek Amar Kol Yotzei Tzava. That's why it says whoever goes out to the tzava. Which means, someone who's appropriate to be like one of the entourage above. Like it says in the Midrash, we are also called tzvaot. So angels and Yisrael are both called tzvaot, hosts. Shneimar, as it says, Yatzu called tzvaot Hashem kederech, like it says there. Sorry. Kederech shemalchim nikru tzvaot, the same way that angels are called tzvaot. Like it says, Hashem tzvakot Elokei Yisrael Yoshev Krovim. So what does tzava mean? Tzava is a reference to a group of angels. Now, he also knows that while that's cute, army means army and tzava means military, and we will need to fight, and he's not going to completely divorce his perush from the pshat. And therefore he says at the end of page 2, Upshuto, and yes, I know, he says, the pshat is who? That it's referring to actual combat at war. Why? Had we not sinned with the Meraglim, we're going to get there later, not today, we would have gone straight into the land. Yes, sometimes you have soldiers under 20 years old. Nevertheless, why is it that the conscription age, in order to join the Jewish biblical army, was 20, as opposed to the conscription age around the world today, which is around 18. He says there are many soldiers under 20. Why would 20 be the age of conscription? Because when we go to war, we're not looking for physical might or strength. We are looking for credit, spiritual credit, our merit with Hashem. The Chol Ben Esrim, every 20-year-old, because you become what's known as a bar onshin. I'll explain that in a moment. As you're more careful with your behavior. Bar mitzvah is when a Jewish male becomes responsible for their own actions and activities. But then there's a further stage, which is when you become 20 years old, you're the bar oinshin, you can become chayav karet. So the punishment of karet cannot apply before you are 20 years old. There's an added level of maturity and life experience to have an even higher level of accountability, which is above what we give a lovely bar mitzvah boy at 13. I remember on my 20th Hebrew birthday, suddenly my entire body was covered in a rash from head to toe. The moment I became a bar oinshin, I had no idea what was going on. It must have been something spiritual, or that Turkish carrot salad. Either way, 20 years old is the age of spiritual accountability. So the reason why to join Hashem's army, you have to be 20 years old is because we want people who are more careful with their action and more spiritually accountable. And therefore you can assume that a 20-year-old, you have greater credit because you have greater accountability. Shari Kohen machriz, because the Kohen would shout out, if you're scared of your averot, don't join our army, go home. So we're looking for people on a high spiritual level. And if you're under the age of 20, they're not as careful because they're not as accountable or responsible. And therefore he doesn't have that many merits. This concludes the first part of our shiur before we move on to something different. Almost entirely different, but somewhat connected. But Parshat Bamidbar, a new Parsha, a new book of the Torah, a census of the nation. Why are we counting the nation? We are counting the nation so that we can create a nation and a community and a society which reflects Hashem's entourage in Shamayim. In Shamayim, Hashem's divine presence is in the middle, and he's surrounded by all these groups of angels. For us as well, if we want Hashem in the middle, we want to reflect and emulate that entourage of Hashem's upper spiritual world. The word tzava in the counting is both a reference to tzvaot, angels, and also it's a reference to the actual military, with an understanding that what's going to prove our military strength in this world is not physical might, but it is going to be our level of spiritual success. I'm going to put you all back on mute. Apparently there's a bit of a disturbance. So hopefully this will help. All right, a new topic. Flags. Flags, banners, play an important role in this week's Parsha. And in chapter 2 of Bamidbar, we read, Ish al diglo be'otot leveit avotam yachanu. Each person should encamp according to his flag and the sounds. Bnei Israel, that's how the Bnei Israel would encamp. Meneged, opposite, saviv la'ol mo'ed yachanu, around the Ol Mo'ed, they would encamp. So we've already built up this concept that we need lots of us. And now we're saying there's a level of organization in the camp that we would each fly our flag. Now, what's the big deal about flags? Source number 5. Source number 6. Matzinu bekama midrashim. We found in numerous midrashim. Hamagdilim me'od inyan ha'dgalim. Beautiful, he did it on purpose. Magdil degel, which increase the concept of the flag. So midrashim, they give a lot of significance to these flags. V'darshu aleihem b'pasuk, and they expounded upon them from the pasuk of Hashem Elokeinu nidgol. We will fly the flag of the name of Hashem. Nidgol, will fly a flag from Degel. What happened? Shebeshat Matan Torah Ra'u Yisrael Malachim Dgalim Dgalim. You see, at Matan Torah, we got a peek of Hashem with a level of revelation that no one else is going to receive ever other than Moshe. And we saw that Hashem was surrounded by all of these flags. The groups of angels each had flags. And therefore, we wanted flags just like the angels have flags. And on the Pasuk in Shir HaShirim, here I've missed out the actual Psukim, but I just wanted to bring the dialogue which he brings here. Darshu, he says as follows. Then the next stage, first stage is Hashem has angels with flags. We wanted flags. We got flags. And then there was the next level of jealousy. The other nations would look at us. And they were just astounded. And they would say, hey, join us, you Jews. Come to us. We're going to make you really important. And we say to the non-Jews, hey, why do we need you? What can you tempt us with? We're not going to go and leave Hashem to join you. Hashem gave us flags. He gave us flags. So why should we join you? And the question is, what's so special about flags? The intellectual observer would just find this wondrous in his eyes. And he'd ask, Ma kol hamolah hazah? What's all this noise? Umada kol kriya homal zeh? What's all this big shouting and calling out? And why are people yearning for flags? Umayakar ugdula nasa Yisrael? What's so great and amazing? That people really wanted to be like us. Well, what's the whole point of flags? And why do people really, really want to be like us? This reminds me of myself on Simchat Torah, where you have certain children without flags who are desperately disappointed that they didn't get a flag. And I just don't get it. It's a flag. It's a piece of paper on a stick. Who cares? What's the whole big point about flags? But here, it appears that we as a nation became jealous of the angels. I don't know about jealous. We wanted to emulate the angels who have flags. And then the other nations looked at us and they said, wow, you're amazing. Come and join us. And we said, no, we've got flags. We don't need you. What's going on here? Kli Yakar goes on to explain as follows. I want to explain as follows. Our great desire was to show all the nations that the name of Hashem is called upon them, and they wanted other nations to scare us. So we wanted to achieve the respect and awe of the nations around us. And the way that we wanted to do this was, as a result, we would raise this flag of Romamut, of being on this high level, and Nitzachon, and victory. Waving the flag is an expression of elevated status and being powerful. B'chol arba ruchot ha'olam, and we want to do this in all four directions of the world. Because we were placed as a camp in all four directions. V'ashchina v'haron ba'emtza, the Shechina and the Aron were in the middle. Tel sha'kol ponim alav, that was the mound to which everybody would turn. Yirukol hamim ki elchu b'shem Hashem. What we're creating is this incredibly impressive national military-styled procession of the Shechina and the Aron in the middle of our camp. We surround them spiritually in order to enable the Shechina to rest, and also to fly these flags, which are just this symbol of power and might. And people would just look at those flags and be in awe of us. And this is just part of the whole setup here. The word ot appears there, the sign. This is the sign. The whole point of this entire setup was to make people focus their attention towards the middle. So we have this encircling of the divine presence of Am Yisrael, each carrying our flags. The point of this order was in order to draw people's attention to the middle of the circle. Kamosh Amru Chazal, like our sages said in the Gemara in Tanit 31a, Le'atid, in the future, Yaseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu letzadikim machol began Eden uchvodo yitbarach ba'emtza. In the future, the tzaddikim in Gan Eden are going to dance around with Hashem in the middle. Now, this isn't just describing a great party with dancing, but the word machol means dancing around in a circle. And the description is that in Gan Eden, Hashem is in the middle and the tzaddikim are all around. Shne'emar, as it says, V'talachti b'tochachem, as we had in last week's Parsha, Hashem said, I will walk amongst you. Ki kol ha'pniyot she'tzaddikim ponim hakol el mul pnei hashchina. Because the entire focus of tzaddikim, whenever they turn, they're turning towards the divine presence, v'chein ba'olam hazeh, and so in this world. And so he goes on to explain, this is what's achieved by a flag. V'zeh ot hadegel, this is the sign of the flag. Ki hu siman hanitzachon b'milchama, which is a sign of military victory. V'degel hu zeh hu b'shem Hashem. What flag do we fly? We fly the flag of doing things in the name of Hashem. Ki lo b'charbam yirshu aretz ki b'shem Hashem. What is the source of our strength? It's not with our swords, but it's with the name of Hashem. V'chol v'chein hamalachim, and similar with the angels, al yedei shehem sovevim kiseh kvodo yitbarach, because the angels are all surrounding Hashem's blessed throne. More amal kol hanimtzaim, we all fear them. So we're now continuing this theme of building up this hugely impressive military-style society and camp, where at the very heart of that society, at the very heart of the national setup is Hashem and the Aron. It is the Torah and the divine presence, which is the focus of everything which is going on here. And he says, Valad Galim Eilu, this is the last thing we're going to see about flags for now. Huftach Yaakov. Yaakov was promised about these flags in the past. Shne'emar bo, because then that is what's said to Yaakov about Ufaratzta yama v'kedma v'tzafona v'negba. You will be scattered in all four directions, north, south, east, and west, just in a different order. Now, what's the connection? The way that the Kli Yakar understands that promise to Yaakov is that the influence of Am Yisrael will burst out in all four directions. Now they're bursting out in four directions, but from where? What's the center point? The center point is the Shekhinah in the Mishkan, and then from there our influence goes out in all four directions. That's why it says each person by his flag according to the signs, because it's a sign of something. Let me ask you a question. You are allowed to unmute yourself now. Let me ask you a question if you look at me here. What is this? Who wants to answer the question?
Your eye, isn't it? No.
Sorry?
Is it your eye or your nose? I can't see.
No, forget about my body. What is
Mug, your cup.
Mug.
Ah, very clever. You're saying this is my mug. I'm actually going to answer your question differently. This is a
I
pointing...
can see it now, yeah.
Don't worry. This is a pointing finger.
Oh, a pointing finger.
This is a pointing finger. You all said a mug, okay? That is the entire point of an ot in the Torah. An ot in the Torah is like this pointing finger. That's like tefillin, like Shabbat, like a flag. Now, what is tefillin? What is Shabbat? What is a flag? The whole point of the ot is to tell us about something else. So you answered correctly when I said, what is this? This is the mug. Okay, so the flag is an ot for something else. It's not a flag, it's a sign of something else. That's not what the word ot means in the Torah.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I'm not going to read it to you all, it's not personal. So that's what these flags are about. They're a symbol to the fact that Hashem is in the middle and Hashem is in charge and Hashem is running everything that we do. And so we've continued this theme of this incredibly impressive setup of Am Yisrael moving through the Midbar with the Shekhinah resting amongst us in the middle. Now, the final thing we're going to look at today is the order of the camp. And in the context of our learning of the Kli Yakar throughout the year, his comments here are going to be, I think, very relevant. And they're relevant in the context of everything that we've seen. And they're relevant to provide context to everything that we've already seen as well. And you understand what I mean soon. The context in the Parsha, at least, is source number 7. V'achodnim kedma mizracha, the ones who are encamped in this direction were Degel Machane Yehuda, the flag of the camp of Yehuda, Letzivotam, according to their hosts, V'nasi Livnei Yehuda Nachshon ben Amandav, and the leader of the tribe was Nachshon, I don't want to get into the details. It's just a pasuk upon which the Kli Yakar goes on and talks about that which took place in the east, but really all 4 directions. Source number 8, the final part of our shiur, top of page 3. V'achonim kedma mizracha degel machane Yehuda. Ta'am l'seder hadgalim al zeh ha'ofen. What is the reason for the order of the tribes as they appear around the Mishkan? He says, Kvar dibru bo harishonim ish kafi sichla. Each one has already, of our commentators, has given their own explanation, and now I'm going to give you my explanation, which is as follows. V'hakarov elai lomar bazeh. What I want to suggest is, shehem al seder arba madregot hakololim kol shleimot enoshi. This is a big claim. He says, the 4 groups of tribes, which are described in this week's Parsha and the way that they're encamped, 4 times 3, 12 tribes, they're in the order of the 4 madregot, the 4 levels, which include within them all shleimut enoshi, human perfection. Everything you need, shleimut, perfection includes everything. So shleimut enoshi, human perfection, is included in these 4 stages. Now, what are the 4 things you need to have everything in this world, to reach the height of human achievement in this world? V'heim, and they are, number 1, kinyan ha-chokhmah, wisdom. V'achareah, then kinyan ha-midot, midot, good character traits and behaviors. V'acharehem kinyan ha-gvura, followed by might. V'achar kulam, and then kinyan ha-osher, wealth. Kichach sidram ha-rambam, that is the order in which Rambam put them. And who wants to tell me, please, why this passage would be very interesting to somebody like us who is learning the Kli Yakar the entire year long?
What about Chesed? Chesed should be there.
He puts Osher last. He puts Osher last.
He doesn't seem to be a big fan of the Rambam.
No, wealth is the last.
Yeah, he puts Osher last because he never ever likes the wealthy people.
All right. You already jumped the stage. Let's move back to it.
Yeah.
You're already saying he doesn't like the wealthy people. The Kli Yakar is.
You told us that.
I did.
I remember.
I did. I wasn't wrong. And let me explain. The Kli Yakar is the great defender of the poor. The Kli Yakar is the great critic of the wealthy elite. Now you're saying he put wealth last, which is true. He did put wealth last. But let's highlight this. When you talk about human perfection, wealth makes the list. And I think that's significant. Let's not highlight the fact that it's last, although he will do that himself. He includes wealth as part of Shleimut Enoshi, human perfection, achieving everything in this world. Wealth makes the list. So yes, it's last on the list, but it's on the list. And I think that's significant. And let's see how he goes through.
Isn't that also what was put down as a quality or a characteristic in choosing in Parshas Yisro the leaders?
Riva, that was an excellent introduction to the next line. The Chazal Amru, and our sages told us in the Gemara Nedarim 38a as follows. One second. Ein hashchina shura. The Shekhinah would only rest ki'im, only upon somebody who is chacham, ashir, gibor, ve'anav. What are the qualities required for spiritual leadership? You have to be chacham, wise, ashir, you have to be wealthy, gibor, you have to be strong or courageous or mighty, ve'anav, and humble. And he says it's the same for ki anava rosh lechol hamidot, because humility is the most important of all the characteristics. When you talk about midot, anava is the same thing. Now he says, look how these 4 qualities are reflected in the 4 degalim. Al kain, therefore, hadgalim elu sheba'u l'hashrat shechina. These flags which came along to enable the divine presence to rest, asher b'tocham sidram al zeh ha'ofen ish al ma'alato. They are done in order of each person or group according to their personal qualities. To tell you, ru'uyin elu, when you have all of these qualities together, then it's appropriate shetishra aleihem hashchina, that the Shekhinah would rest upon us. Ki kol arba ma'alot elu nimtzeim behem, because we have all of these 4 qualities. I hope you understand Now, what we're learning today is not just spiritual mathematics or details or dry facts about how to have Hashem's divine presence in the wilderness thousands of years ago. What we're discussing in the book of Bamidbar is how to build a Jewish society, how to build a society where Hashem can be in our midst. This is what we're discussing. What are the human qualities required? Where does our focus need to be? How should we organize ourselves when we are organizing ourselves as Am Yisrael? Quality number one is Torah. Where do we see that? And now he beautifully goes through each of the tribes. I've cut this down a bit, but he goes through each of the tribes to explain how they reflect these qualities. Number one, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun, Rishona, Yisrael. First up, Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. Ki mehem tetzei Torah, because they are the ones from whom Torah comes forth. Why? Ki b'Yehuda, with Yehuda it says, La yasu shevet miYehuda, mechokek mibein raglav. The staff shall not be removed from Yehuda, and the mechokek, which means comes from chok, meaning the rule, the law, will not be removed from between his feet, legs. And what does that mean? Elu Rashi Galuyot v'nisei Eretz Yisrael. These are the great leaders inside and outside Israel who will come from Yehuda. Ve'ein mechokek ela Torah. Mechokek is a reference to Torah. So Yehuda will be a source of Torah. V'achonim alav matei Yisachar, and then upon him are Yisachar. The Kli Yakar understands alav as mean not being above in importance, but next down. Next comes Yisachar, Shneimar Barabat, who says, "Umibnei Yisachar yodei bina li'itim." From the children of Yisachar will be those who understand bina, the great understanding for the ages, for the times. So Yisachar is a source of Torah. Matez Zvulun, when it comes to Zvulun, Shneimar Barabat, who says, "Umizvulun moshchim b'shevet sofer." From Zvulun, it says in Shoftim, we will draw from the tribe scribes. And also, also Zvulun helps Yisachar learn Torah. So we all know about the Yisachar-Zvulun relationships. One learns, one pays. But what's nice is that even the side that's paying are still people who learn Torah. It's not that they only sign checks. They're also involved in the learning of Torah. That's why it doesn't say that Zvulun comes next in line. He didn't want Zvulun to be lower than Yisachar. The one who learns Torah and the one who supports Torah are on an equal level. And about these three, the tribes of Torah, it says, Rishona Yisa'u, they travel first. Because they take precedence when it comes to war. Our war is not with a sword or a spear. It's a play on words. We need to be armed with the books of the Torah. It's the zchut of Torah which helps us at war. And therefore they are the head, tribe, flag, banner describing our victory. So first up is Torah. Next on the list, Anava. Degel, Machane, Reuven, Shimon, Gad, Taimana. Next up, Reuven, Shimon, and Gad. V'ha'achna'a, submission, lowering one's head, behaving in a humble way. Rosh l'chol hamidot hatavot is the starting point and the most important point of all good midot. Umidah zo hayta etzel Reuven. How do we know Reuven had this trait? Because when it came to the act of Bilha, he was prepared to admit that which he did wrong, and he wasn't too proud to, or ashamed or humiliated to admit his mistake. He was able to admit what he did wrong. And that comes from humility. Because an arrogant person won't be able to admit such truths. Umin Shimon, how do we know that Shimon had the trait of humility? Because from Shimon come the teachers and the scribes and the poor people, who do better when it comes to humility than others. Gad, and Gad as well. He was a generous person when it came to tzedakah. Tzidkat Hashem asa u'mishpatav Yisrael. He does the righteousness of Hashem and his judgments in Israel. And fascinatingly, the Kli Yakar views someone who's a Baal Tzedakah as naturally being an Anav, perhaps because the Baal Tzedakah understands that their wealth doesn't truly belong to them. They are just conduits of Hashem's blessing. The penultimate group, Degel Machaneh, the next camp we have is a flag of the camp of Ephraim, Menashe, or Binyamin. Yama to the west, Ushlishim, Yisa'u, they would travel third. Kimalat Hagvura Shlishit, third up we have Gvura. V'chtiv Bahem, and it says about them, Lifnei Ephraim, Binyamin, Menashe, or Arad, Gvura Tech. There's one pasuk in Tehillim, Perek Pei, which brings these three tribes together, and it says that Hashem's Gvura, or Gvura, is aroused amongst and before these three tribes. Where does it come from? Ki Yosef Bechor Shor, Asher Lo HaKoach v'Hagvura. Yosef is known as Bechor Shor, the first one, the ox, which is the source of might and strength. Uvinyamin Ze'ev Yitraf. With Binyamin, we have the wolf of prey, or the wolf which is torn. V'kinyan Ze'holech Upochet Miyom Liyom. But note that when it comes to physical strength and might, this is something which diminishes from one day to the next. Tash kochosh adam, a person becomes weaker as time goes on. And now he has a beautiful sentiment for a Monday morning. Ki yom hamavet matchil miyom hivaldo. You start dying from the moment you're born. Lovely concept. Al kain, therefore, chaneatam leruach ma'aravi. That's why they were in the west. Ki boto ruach hashemesh holech v'chaseh, the direction in which the sun sets. So gvura, which diminishes with time, is on the side upon which the sun sets. Finally, we reach Osher, which is important to take into account within the context of the Kli Yakar's general view of wealth. As we have said, the Kli Yakar is a regular, consistent critic of the wealthy. And that's, of course, from his own life and his own poverty, where he couldn't afford to bring out many of his own writings. And this book itself was only published because he was miraculously saved from illness. And he promised Hashem that if he'd be miraculously saved, then he'd write him a commentary on the Torah, which he did in the year after he recovered. The Kli Yakar suffered with poverty in his time. And he was a critic of the wealthy of his time. So let's reach the wealthy tribes. Degel Machaneh, Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Tzfana to the north. Ushloshtan hayu ba'alei Osher. We know that these three tribes were wealthy. Shnei Marza says, "Me Asher shmeina lachmo," because it says in Breshit about Asher, talked about the great fat of his bread, talking about his great wealth. Uchtiv, and it says about Naphtali savar ratzon umalei berkat Hashem. That's from Parsha V'zot HaBracha. Naphtali savar ratzon. He's completely full of desire, meaning he's got whatever he wants. He's filled with Hashem's blessing. He ta'ashir, that's something which causes wealth. So, Asher was a wealthy tribe. Naphtali was wealthy. Shevet Dan, and at the top of the list of the wealth was Shevet Dan. Asa eglei zahav, he made golden calves, ba'avol rov zahav shush ba'alehem, because they just had so much gold. According to the Kli Yakar, he has to put a sting in there. Why is Dan the final tribe? Because he was the wealthiest and he misused his wealth. The kinyan is there. Yes, it's necessary, but as you correctly pointed out, he says this kinyan, this quality which is required for human perfection, is the lowest of them all. Therefore, when it comes to wealth, it says it goes at the end. But what I want to highlight today is not the fact that he puts wealth at the end. It's the fact that he puts wealth on the list. It's the fact that he acknowledges that there is a place for financial security in this world. The fact that he acknowledges that a part of reaching human achievement in this world is reaching a place where you don't have to worry about where your next meal is going to come from or who's going to pay the rent or those kind of things. He does give it a place. And yes, he puts it at the end, and he says that the wealthiest tribe goes last, but the fact that he gives it a place, I think, is very significant because it's up there in what is required for the Shekhinah to rest amongst us. For the Shekhinah to rest amongst us, when you're creating an ideal society, there is a place for wealth, but wealth needs to be in the context of Torah, Anava, and Gvura. If you have Torah, if you behave with humility, if you have Gvura, then within that context, there is a place, a healthy and natural and important place for wealth, but within proportion. Not that it's the most important thing. It's not the most important thing. And it's not more important than Torah, and it's not more important than Midot, but it does have a place. And the fact that the Kli Yakar gives it place in this week's Parsha, I think is significant. And he concludes and he says, Upniyat Kulam El Hashchina Sheba Emtza. We just have to remember all of this is about all of them turning towards the Shekhinah in the middle. Ki kulam ki echad tovim k'shemeshamshim bahem l'shem shamayim. Look at this. He says they are all equally good when you use them for Shem Shamayim. He says Torah, Midot, Gvura, and wealth are all equal when you use it l'Shem Shamayim. And therefore, I think this is a very important section in the Kli Yakar and a key section in the Kli Yakar in the context of what he writes throughout the rest of the year. And yes, the book of Bamidbar, let's see what he's got in store for us in the book of Bamidbar. You're all welcome to continue on the journey of the Kli Yakar on the book of Bamidbar. I wish you all a great day and a great week.
Yes.
Thank
you, Rabbi, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Rabbi Merv, is he still there?
I was just about to leave. Hannah, yes, we're recording.
That is fine. Rabbi Mervis, I'm sure I'm not the only woman in Mizrahi who really wants to come back to shul, of course, with the government regulations.
So fill in a form. Fill in a form. We had women that showed the Shabbat.
Fill in the form, okay.
Yeah, we had women that showed the Shabbat. All you have to do is fill in a form and meet all the requirements.
But you said to me before that we could only do it, we couldn't do the Ezrat Nashim or something. I didn't understand.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that. Okay.
No. All right. So just fill in.
Okay, so that's cleared it. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Be well.
Thank you. Okay.